Hey everyone, welcome to week 66. Today is Friday, day 5. This is our last day on our Cobalt Teal week. This is the last day we're going to use that really amazing blue pigment as our sole blue hue in our primary color palette. So we'll see how that goes. Remember, next week, new theme. We're going to be here.
Okay, let's get started. This is Friday. This is our last day of our Cobalt Teal week. And for today, I thought it'd be cool if we do something a little bit different. By that, I mean that the paintings that we've done for the past couple of days have been portraits. I always tell you guys that I try to make an effort to see if I could expand my horizons, if I could paint something else that is not portraiture. And I always push myself to try and have like varied subject matter. But honestly, I just gravitate towards portraits. And I think it's a very natural thing. It's not that I want to fall back onto this one thing that I know how to do. It's just that I find it fascinating. For me, painting people is the most satisfying thing in the world. For me, to reflect upon our humanity, the nature of our species, while I'm painting another human being, can't be compared to anything else. I mean, I can find joy and I find it incredibly interesting to paint whatever subject matter you put in front of me. For me, painting is painting. It doesn't matter if you're painting a human being or if you're painting like a little bit of dust that's in the corner. It's all the same. But the connection that I have with painting fellow human beings is incredible. I try as much as I can. I try to push myself to tackle other subject matters, but I know that I do primarily paint portraits, and that's okay. The other day, and I'm going to call him out because he's awesome, but the other day, William Ray saw one of my paintings and he was like, oh, I was scrolling through your feed and I saw this and I was like, oh, it's not a portrait and it's a really cool painting. It's as if it was expected that my feed was just about portraits. And I was like, oh, what is Bill talking about? Like, let me check my feed and let me see if all I do is portraits. And of course, if I go in there with like tweezers, I can find like a bunch of stuff that I painted that's not portraits. But yeah, primarily Bill is right. You probably can't expect to find portraits in my feed. And even though if I'm super defensive, I'm going to say that, I do paint other stuff. No, I paint people and I'm totally fine with painting people. But for today, I wanted to see if I could change it up a little bit because yesterday while I was doing that self-portrait, it was really nice. I thought it was a very nice way of trying to understand myself, not through, your regular features, not through your traditional features. What I tend to see is that people become super interested in the specificity of features. For example, as human beings and specifically as painters, there's a ton of people out there that love when you can teach them how to paint an eye or how to paint a nose or how to construct a mouth. A lot of people are really, really interested in those things. And to be completely honest with you guys, I never stopped and became more interested in the features than I was with any other part of the body. Any other part. Like when I was trying to understand a moment of the body, for me, it was equally as amazing to understand how a wrist works, how a forearm works, as when I was painting an eye. It was the same thing. It was just understanding structure and the makeup of form and how shapes turn in space. It was all the same thing to me. I have to be honest. And I know that this is me, this is my path, and there's probably a reason why, those things don't really interest me. For example, my favorite painter ever, who I think is like the best painter ever, Rembrandt, I'm not sure if he could teach classes about structure or anatomy. Anatomy, I know for sure he wouldn't, because there's a ton of mistakes, if you want to understand them as such. But there's a ton of things that are off. That's also the case with Goya. Goya, for example, was one of the best draftspeople ever. I mean, this is my appreciation. I mean, this is totally subjective. And I think that there's something to this, about not necessarily having to know or understand the makeup of things. You don't have to understand the structure of our skull to be able to paint a portrait. I think Rembrandt is the greatest portraitist ever. And I don't know if there's knowledge in the sense of, oh yeah, that's how you paint a mouth, or that's how you paint a nose, or that's how you paint an eye. So much so that when you look at Rembrandt's portraits, there are so many ways in which he resolved an eye or a nose or a mouth. I mean, look at his self-portraits. He never looked the same. Every time he painted himself, you can say, oh yeah, that's Rembrandt. But when you compare the portraits, they're all different. They're all completely different. So I love that he had this sense of freedom. He was a very kind of organic artist. And I've always stated this, but I think that you make up the lack of knowledge with acute observation. And I think Rembrandt was one of the highest and most sensitive human beings that has ever observed through painting. Again, this is purely subjective, but to me, that's as close to a fact as you can come. So what was interesting about yesterday's portrait, as I was saying, was that I wanted to paint myself. I wanted something that truly felt like me, where I could identify myself in that painting. If I showed it to Fer or Samu, they could say, yeah, that's you, Dad. And that it wouldn't really depend on me modeling a nose or modeling how the mouth turns or modeling my eyes, because we tend to say, oh, I recognize you immediately because those are your eyes, or, oh yeah, those are your lips, and that's what makes you, you. And I thought about, well, what if me is just this little fuzz, almost imperceptible, bit of hair that's at the top of my head and this wrinkled up forehead? What if that's the way I understand myself? What if what light is describing is just that moment of my head and I could see myself in there? Obviously, I helped myself by using a framing device that would be the beard. The beard actually gives a sense of where the placement of the mouth would be, and that tiny bit of the mustache that connects with the nostril tells you where the nose would be. So you start understanding the nose without really having to model the nose. You start understanding where the mouth would be without really having to model the mouth. It was something really cool. It had to be just a very, very simple painting. And also, in terms of the formal aspects of the painting, I wanted to do something yesterday that I hadn't done before with the other paintings, which was to really explore like the mid-tone or dark mid-tone areas of the palette that's available when you paint with those primary colors. I mean, I obviously had painted shadow masses in the first 3 days, but I had also given light more protagonism. So I wanted to see if I could explore shadow, if I could be loose with shadow, if I could be very vague with shadow. But I had to be sensitive. There are changes in hues, there are shifts there, even small shifts in value, but it's very, very rich what's happening inside the shadow mass. Again, changes in hues, changes in temperature, tiny changes in value. I love that. If I could describe my painting, which I never liked doing, but if I had to describe what's at the core of my painting, it's that. That bit of shadow mass, I think, encompasses who I am. And there's a reason why I thought this would be a really cool self-portrait. Like, this would be a nice way of depicting myself. It's that emptiness of shadow, that broadness of shadow. A shadow mask doesn't have to describe form. It is not in its nature to have to feel obligated to describe form. That is light's obligation. That's what light does. That's what the nature of light does when describing form, when making form visible. So I wanted to have this seemingly empty space. And yesterday I was saying how this empty space would symbolize my cleansing, my openness to new ways of dealing with color, accepting new relationships between color and form, which was what I was describing yesterday when I was talking about Josie's portrait. So yesterday was a really nice balance to the first 3 paintings of the week, and I felt really nice. I thought that yesterday, the openness and understanding the responsibility that I had to really find my edges, to really understand when something had to be of higher contrast, when something had to be sharper. And this is very, very subtle stuff, but I think yesterday's painting would not be as effective, wouldn't have worked as well if I wasn't really tuning into my edges. So the idea of openness, of bigness, was also accompanied by a reflection of edges. So today, because that concept of edge work and that concept of atmosphere, yesterday was a very soupy, mid-tone heavy atmosphere that was present in the shadow mass. I told myself, okay, let's do something lighter today. Let's do something that requires me to be as responsible with my edge work as yesterday, but where we can also enjoy the more airy side of a lighter atmosphere. And that's why I took a knob of garlic, a head of garlic, And I was like, okay, let's try this. This is a light object that's turning in space, casting a shadow. There are going to be shifts in hues. There are going to be little changes in saturation, little changes in temperature. The challenge was going to be trying to depict those beautiful shifts with the richness that is available through this primary color palette. Hopefully, Bill is scrolling through my feed and he's going to see a knob of garlic and he's going to say, oh, it's not a portrait. And that's going to be good. He's going to appreciate that. And to arm myself with courage, because this is something that I always do when I have to attack a painting, I think of artists that are going to help me find my way. What I don't have to do specifically is just Google images of their work or just go to a book that I may have on their work and just flip through the pages and then power up through all the consumption of those images. No, I don't have to do that, but I have to remind myself of what I enjoy about their work. And I think for today, it is very, very evident. I had one person in mind, which is Quang Ho. He's a tremendous painter. He's an incredible, incredible painter. He encompasses many of the things that I love about painting. I mean, he is as bold as you can be. I can't think of very many figurative painters that can be as bold as him. And he has this brushwork that is also balanced beautifully by this attention to drawing. He has a drawing sensitivity that's very, very high, a drawing ability that is present in every single thing he does. It's not as if you can spot an outline in his paintings. It's not as if there's a really tight underdrawing underneath his very brushy paintings. No, his drawing ability is actually understood by the accuracy of his brushstrokes and the commitment behind his brushwork. He is swinging for the fences every single time. He could be just doing a very expressive brushstroke. He could be smudging paint. He could be scraping paint off. All of those things are very specific actions, and they all have objectives. The paintings can end up being really, really expressive, almost abstract expressionist. I mean, there's one painting of a pair of lemons that is almost like a Gerhard Richter. He's able to tap into a ton of the very, very expansive vocabulary that painting has. He's able to do a ton of things in a single painting, but it doesn't look jumbled. It doesn't look forced. It's not like he's throwing the kitchen sink at a painting and hoping that it sticks. No, his paintings are just very chaotic because there is a bit of chaos in his brushwork. I think that every single great painting, every single great painter has to have some chaos in their brush. And I think Quang has that. But the paintings don't feel disorganized. They don't feel like they're about to fall apart. If anything, he's able to communicate through this chaos. He's able to depict a choreography of forms based on those very free marks. So there's a ton of liberty when he's doing almost like action painting sort of brushstrokes. He's almost like fencing with a brush. And there's also a ton of discipline when he knows that he has to hit his drawing, when he knows that the translation of three-dimensionality of form and atmosphere and space and placement, they depend on how well he's able to hit his brushstrokes. And you can totally feel the oscillating manner in which he gives himself liberty, and then when he has to rein it back in and say, now I have to be disciplined. And as soon as he has enough, he lets go a little bit again, and you can tell that his hand picks up speed. And once again, you can tell when he just says, okay, slow down, and you have to hit these few marks because the painting depends on them. He's betting everything on having the ability to find his way through those brushstrokes. And I think he's absolutely incredible at it. Because I think we've all experienced those paintings where we, for some reason, we were loose or looser than what we usually are. And when we take a step back, we realize, oh my God, I'm completely lost. And there's so many, pseudo-expressive choices in here that it's going to be very, very tough for me to find my way. And when we get to those places in paintings, many times we just accept defeat and we say, you know what, tomorrow, I'll pick it up tomorrow, and maybe I have some sort of clarity tomorrow, and we'll see if we can save this painting, but I got to do it tomorrow. I have to stop. And the next day can be tough. Many times we end up scraping the painting, or many times we're so frustrated that we say, I'm just going to put the painting aside, and I need to look at it with fresh eyes in a couple of weeks. And maybe, you go back to the painting and you have to redraw and recompose the painting because you realize that you were trying to grasp something while you were painting, but it was almost impossible. It was really, really hard. Like, you put yourself in a situation where it was just like quicksand and you couldn't get out. And I think Kwang is able to, in a very beautiful, graceful way, kind of fend off those demons. He's able to insert himself in a situation where a painting seems like it's about to fall apart, but he has the mental fortitude and the discipline to say, okay, we are right at that edge. Now I have to be extra careful. I can't sacrifice the energetic nature of the brushstrokes just because I'm being sensitive. You know, that's also super important. It's not like his painting screeches to a halt and then, you know, he's super, super tight in some areas. No. He's always very brushy. Always super, super expressive. What changes, I think, I'm assuming a lot of this, but what I think happens is that when you let yourself go, you are painting instinctually. And when you have to be disciplined, you become a bit more rational. You question a lot of what you're doing and you start to check yourself. That's something that you may not do when you're painting instinctually. You much rather question those decisions afterwards, but not as you're doing them. So I think Kwang has that beautiful, beautiful balance. Today's painting, well, I'm obviously not capable of invoking the energy or the very masterful brushwork that Kwang has in his own paintings. I'm not as disciplined as he is, and I'm not as good as being bold with my brushstrokes as he is. But like I said with Siebe's paintings, where I was invoking the help from Ben Björklund, I think today is the same thing. You know, great painters, they come to your aid. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful ways to connect with other painters and to understand that we're all part of this bigger endeavor, this beautiful, beautiful effort that has been done through centuries, through millennia, where human beings are trying to understand nature and understand themselves through painting. And what better way to recognize that we are a community than by thinking of somebody who's great at painting like Kwang is, and just asking them, not literally, but asking them through what you've learned about their work, that they come to your rescue and they inject in you a little bit of that courage that you were missing. So it was a really nice painting today. It was nice to explore the lighter side of this palette, to try to keep, and I didn't want to make this cheap, but to try to push the rich chroma that is still available. Even if you're using titanium white to make the colors lighter, there's still going to be a really nice saturation, really nice richness and brightness to the colors that you can get with these beautiful, amazing primary colors. So I thought it was a very nice way to end the week. That's going to be it for today. As we say on Fridays, Danny, Samu, Fer, and myself, we thank you for giving us a chance to be your company, even if it's for a few minutes every day. And all we ask is that you give us a chance to be your company next week. We'll see you guys next week. We're going to be here. There's going to be a new theme. So love you guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.